Hello everybody, how you doing today? I was going to do this yesterday, but Facebook was down, so I didn't get the chance to do so. The title of the lesson today is God Demands Legalism. And so we need to talk about this because there's a lot of, that word legalist is being thrown around a lot, and it usually is spoken in a derogatory way. And we're going to see what the Bible has to say about it. I think this is something that is needed by everyone. They need to hear this. And then we will determine if we are legalists. And I believe God commands it. And so let's see exactly what that means. So ever since the Garden of Eden, when Eve ate the forbidden fruit and gave to her husband to eat, things have remained the same. The majority of people in this world choose not to obey God. I mean, they want to do what they want to do. And when someone has the audacity to tell them that they are in sin for doing so, one of the retorts that has been coming up lately is something like, "You're just a legalist." And this is not spoken in a kind manner. Now, let's see what the dictionary defines legalism. It defines legalism as strict adherence to the law. In many segments of our society, this is kind of expected and, in many ways, enforced. Yet when it comes to religious practice, people choose not to follow the laws of God. And they want to feel secure in their salvation, but they do not want to follow all those rules. So they choose not to follow those rules, and someone says, "But wait a minute, you're not following the rules." Well, you're just a legalist. Somehow this phrase, "you're just a legalist," just gets everybody step back and shut up and change their direction or change their approach. I mean, it's very similar to the word racist is used. People just throw that around like crazy and, oh, no, 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 no. I mean, it's just one of those bad taboo things. But since legalism is the strict adherence to the law, then a legalist would be one who strictly adheres to the law. Now, let's face it. You are a legalist. That is, if you stop at a traffic signal that is red. Well, if you stop at a stop sign, that's complying with the law. You're a legalist. If you follow the directions on the box, you're a legalist. You don't make changes or anything like that. Or if you play a game according to the rules. And what happens when you don't have a rule book around, then anything goes, right? That's why in professional sports they have umpires and they have referees and they have people to make sure people comply with the rules. Otherwise, somebody's going to take advantage of that, and in other words, they're going to cheat. So that's why they're there. But think about it this way. How comfortable would you be if the pharmacist changed the prescription the doctor prescribed for you? Would that bother you? I mean, would it be acceptable for the pharmacist to maybe take a look at you and decide you're overweight and give you a double measure? Or if you were skinny, if the pharmacist decided you did not need so much medicine? And what if the pharmacist substituted a different medicine from what the doctor prescribed? Well, not only would it be illegal, it could kill you. But spiritually speaking, we have the same problem. The doctor in our case is God. God has prescribed exactly what we need to do and how we need to do it. And then people come along and say, "Well, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that, and let's just change things around." I mean, they do that. I mean, that's why we have thousands upon thousands of different denominations out there, all claiming to be followers of God, but yet teaching different things, and that's not right. I mean, another way of looking at it, in the New Testament days, publicans or tax collectors were despised. And why was it? Well, because they were trying to get what they could. They'd look at somebody and figure, hey, they can probably handle it, so they'd charge them a little bit extra for their taxes. And maybe if they had some buddies, they would say, "Well, I'm not going to charge you as much for your taxes that you need." And so they kept changing, and they had such power that if someone did not pay what they said you need to pay, well, guess what? You're going to jail. And they put them in prison. And so, but think about this. Would you want to pay more taxes than what you actually owe? You know, a lot of people want to find these little tax loopholes and find ways in which I don't have to pay as much in taxes. And everybody wants to point out those people who don't pay much in taxes. Well, why? Because they're following the law. Because the law allows them to do that. If you get rid of all the little contingencies and all the little loopholes, perhaps people would pay their taxes and our country would not be in as bad a shape as it is in. So, would we consider it fair if our neighbor was given a lower tax rate just because they were friends with the tax collector? No, we want everybody to be treated fairly. And that means you and me and the other guy. So that's what we want. We want that. And a big problem in our society is that people are not treated fairly and equally. I mean, we know that's the case. It's sad, it's horrible, it's despicable. But, I mean, whatever the factors might be, it's still wrong. Like skin color. That is a problem for many people in our country. And so they're treated differently. Social and financial status is a problem. I mean, if you're not ultra rich, that people look down on you, or that they look at you and call you white trash or black trash or whatever kind of trash they want to call you. And sometimes culture and religion, people drive along and you see someone wearing a turban. You make fun of them. You wear someone wearing a burqa, and you make fun of them. And that's all wrong. We're not supposed to treat people that way. And yet somehow we think that it's socially acceptable to mistreat people. Just like it's socially acceptable to mistreat Christians. But, I mean, it's never right to mistreat and treat someone differently. We know what Jesus said. I mean, treat people the way you want others to treat you. So, when it comes down to it, we demand legalism just about everywhere. We want everybody to abide by the rules. If there's a law on the books, we want it to be enforced. And we get frustrated when the government decides, well, we're not going to enforce this law, and we're not going to do that. I mean, then change the law. Don't just ignore it. Change it if you need to. But we expect it everywhere. We want people to abide by the laws. Otherwise, someone could get hurt. Someone says, well, red lights don't apply to me. I'm just going to go through anyway. I mean, someone's liable to get hurt. I mean, they may get away with it a few times, but eventually it's going to catch up with them. And when it comes to serving God, do your own thing. That's what people say. Just do your own thing. Whatever you feel like doing. But let's look at it this way. How do you think God feels concerning those who choose to ignore His commands and do their own thing? You know, we're told to do the commandments of God. Usually what others mean, here's the crux there. When other people call us legalists, I mean, they use that. And what they mean is different from what the dictionary teaches. They usually mean that we are establishing our own rules in order to get to heaven. And when we demand those rules upon others, we become legalists. And it's also talking about those who feel that they can, by following the rules, they can earn their way into heaven. That is a slight variation of legalism. But what does God say about His rules that He gives us? Should we pay attention to all of them, or do we just pick and choose which rules we're going to follow? See, the people who make these accusations, I mean, let's face it. Why do they do it? Because chances are they are not following God's rules, and if we want them to go to heaven, we're going to teach them what the Bible says. and they just don't want to hear it. They want to do their own thing. So what do? They call us a legalist. And basically what that does is just like being called a racist, just makes you shut up and just leave them alone. Well, there's a problem there. They're going to lose their soul because of what they're not doing or what they are doing. So let's look at some passages in the scriptures and see if God's words are important, if God's rules were meant to be followed. You know, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden, in Genesis 2:16, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. All right, there's an implied statement here. He just made a statement here. I mean, it wasn't, thou shalt not eat of this tree. It was implied by the statement. If you eat it, you're going to die. In other words, don't eat it. But we know, reading the story, Adam and Eve learned the consequence of disobeying that command. And so, I mean, they were put out of the Garden of Eden, and they had, instead of having the paradise that they had, I mean, man had to go to work, woman had to bear the children. And so Adam and Eve learned the consequence of disobeying, and we must learn there are consequences if we disobey God. We know the children of Israel had the consequence that if you choose not to obey God, there's going to be consequences. Let's read just a few passages here in Deuteronomy 4, 1 and 2, and 5 and 6. It says, now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I teach you to observe, that you may live and go in and possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. Then jump down to verse 5. Surely I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. Therefore be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. I mean, just plain and simple. I mean, we're supposed to be careful to do those commandments. He repeats that several times in Deuteronomy. In chapter 6 and verse 1 through 3. Now this is the commandment, and these are the statutes and judgments which the Lord your God has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them in the land which you are crossing over to possess, that you may fear the Lord your God, and keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. Therefore, hear, O Israel, and be careful to observe it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly as the Lord God of your fathers has promised you, a land flowing with milk and honey. So, what do you command them? To observe the laws. Now, what does that mean? It's like a person today who reads the law. Well, I don't want to do that. No, a person who not only reads it, but abides by it, lives by it, by actually doing what God tells them to do. That's what it means to observe the law. It doesn't mean just look at it. I mean, observe with the purpose of doing. And if they are careful to observe his laws. Now, which laws, I ask you? Which laws of God are important that these children of Israel were told? Was it some of his laws? Most of his laws? Would God be satisfied with anything less than all of his laws being kept and observed? Well, I mean, the answer should be quite obvious, but people don't see it that way anymore. A lot of people in this world just pick and choose which laws they want to follow and think, well, that's good enough. God's going to accept me for that. And they don't do everything. Notice in Deuteronomy 8, verse 1 and 2, it says, every commandment which I command you today, you must be careful to observe. He didn't say some, he didn't say most, he said every commandment. He says that you may live and multiply and go in and possess the land of which the Lord swore to your fathers. And you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. I mean, if you will do these things, when you go in and possess the land, he's going to benefit you. You're going to have that land flowing with milk and honey. And you're going to be blessed in so many ways if you follow these commands. Now, implied in that statement is if you choose not to follow the commands, the blessings aren't going to be there. And God will specifically say that later on. All right, Deuteronomy 12 through 13. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God require of you but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him and serve the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes which I command you today for your good. I mean, we can't serve God half-heartedly or without our heart being into it. And that's what he says. You got to serve him with your heart and with all your soul, and keep the commandments of the Lord. Once again, which commandments of the Lord? Well, not some commandments, not most commandments, but all the commandments of the Lord. Now, Deuteronomy 11, 13 through 16. And it shall be that if you earnestly obey my commandments, which I command you today, to love the Lord your God and serve him with all your heart, with all your soul, then I will give you the rain for your land in the season, the early rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in your grain, your new wine, and your oil. And I will send grass in your fields for your livestock, that you may eat and be filled. Take heed to yourselves, lest your heart be deceived, and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. So, I mean, this is quite obvious. If you will serve me, then I'll bless you. I'll give you the rain and everything. Now, in Deuteronomy 28, I mean, basically, God told the people, hey, if you don't serve me, I'm going to withhold the rain. And I'm going to withhold your blessings. And you're going to suffer until you see fit to serve me. In Deuteronomy 12:32, it says, whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to or take away from it. I mean, when you fail to do what God tells you to do, it's basically you're taking away from what God said. Or if you decide to do things differently, you're actually adding to what God said. And people do that all the time. You know, we see this. We talk about this when we talk about the denominations. They turn their back on God and just do what they want to do. And the people love it so. People want it that way. All right, Deuteronomy 26:16. This day the Lord your God commands you to observe these statutes and judgments. Therefore you should be careful to observe them all, your heart and with all your soul. I mean, let's face it. Command to observe these statutes and judgments. What are statutes and judgments? They're commands, commandments, anything that comes from God, anything that's God's will and he expresses to mankind, I want you to do this. And what happens? If we don't do it, we're going to get punished. And we have a Bible just full of examples of people who chose not to serve God and they paid the price for it. Some of them willingly, some of them unknowingly, and they still paid the price. Look at us, poor Uzzah. Uzzah, just acting in all sincerity, trying to protect the ark of God. When the oxen stumbled, he put his hand to keep it from falling over, and the Lord struck him dead. Now, people today, that doesn't fit with the philosophy and teaching. Well, if your heart's in the right place, God's going to accept that. His heart was in the right place, there's no doubt about it. But God did not accept that. In Deuteronomy 31, we see what Moses did. So Moses wrote this law and delivered it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. In other words, he passed copies around. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time in the year of release, at the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God in the place which he chooses, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Gather the people together, men and women and little ones, and the stranger who is within your gates, that they may hear and they may learn to fear the Lord your God and carefully observe all the words of this law. Notice that? All the words of this law. That doesn't mean some or just a few that we like. Just all of them. And we notice that they were supposed to, every 7 years, what we call the year of Jubilee, every 7 years, the year of release, they were supposed to gather Israel together. Of course, this was eventually going to be in Jerusalem. They were required to all assemble in Jerusalem 3 times a year. And one of the Feast of Tabernacles, also known as the Feast of Booths, I mean, when you get the people together, you read the entire law to them. Well, what happened? After Moses gave this instruction, they didn't read it anymore. They didn't read the law. They just let the scribes learn the law, and just the scribes would tell the people what their interpretation of that law was, instead of reading the law in the hearing of the people. And everybody was supposed to hear it, young and old. I mean, even strangers and visitors, everyone was supposed to hear what the law of God was. See, God still commands legalism in this day. And you might say, but wait a minute, you read from the Old Testament, these were commands given to the Israelites by Moses all those years ago. And you teach that we are no longer under those laws, but under a different system called grace. And since we are under grace, why do we have to obey the commandments of God so carefully? Well, folks, things have not changed. We have just as much responsibility to observe all of God's laws as carefully as we can as they did. That aspect of what God's relationship with man is has not changed. That was not done away with. Because you look at what Jesus said, he said, all things that I say to you, all things that I teach you. And so the answer to the question, why do we have to do it since we're under grace and not under law? The answer is because God commands us to keep his commandments. I mean, there shouldn't be any argument about that. God commands it. See, Jesus taught, Matthew 7:21, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. And Jesus also said, John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. Matthew 28:20, after he said, go teach all nations, baptizing them, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And so, the all things that I've commanded you, in other words, everything Jesus taught, we have that responsibility to do. So you just have to ask the question, are the words of Jesus important? Well, most people in denominations, the words of Jesus are not important. And that becomes quite obvious because they do their own thing. They don't do things the way God has commanded them be done. And so these ought to be a sufficient number of verses that should impress upon us and everyone that doing God's will is a duty of every person. You know, God's will. I mean, fear God, keep his commandments. I mean, this is man's all. Ecclesiastes 12:13. So, now, let's get down to it. Why do people charge us with legalism in a derogatory way? I mean, when you think about it, should not the label of legalist be a badge of honor? You're doing the very best that you can to honor God's laws and do God's laws. That should be something we can be proud of and know God is happy with us when we do that. See, their problem is they have chosen to turn away from the truth of God's Word and practice the doctrines and precepts of men. Whether they follow other men or make up their own rules, they are not following God's rules. And somehow I think that down deep, many of them know they are wrong, but they just ignore that feeling. They know they're wrong. They know that when we say, but wait a minute, the Bible says, well, you're just a legalist. That's what they charge us with. And they do that in the hopes that we just shut up and leave them alone. Well, chances are if we leave them alone, they're going to be lost. Their soul's going to be lost. And Christians should not want that upon anybody, and we should be at least trying to help them. So we should seek to keep all of God's commandments, and we should be proud to be called a legalist. I mean, let's face it, it should be something to be proud of. Just make sure that the definition is the dictionary definition and not what they have contrived up and made up in their own mind. See, those who do not obey God will be separated from Him forever. We read there in 2 Thessalonians 1:9, these shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of His power. So the question, are you putting forth the effort to become a legalist? You should be a legalist already. If you're trying to please God, if you're trying to serve God to the best of your ability, then you're already a legalist. And keep in there, maintain the course. And when people call you a legalist, well, ask them to define the word for you and get it right, because the dictionary says something totally different than what they mean. So clarify that, and then let it be known to them. Now, wait a minute. What parts of God's law can we ignore and still be acceptable to God? I mean, just simple question. And yeah, then they're probably going to turn around and deride you even further and say things about you and call you names. But you know what? Yeah, we've been told to expect that. When we teach the truth, we know, and anyone who desires to live godly will suffer persecution. So think about these things. That's our lesson, and I hope it clarifies some things for you. All right, that's our lesson. Lord willing, be back again tomorrow with another lesson. Bye-bye for now.